Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, back with another Canadian benefit update for you. And just yesterday, there was a new lawsuit filed against the Canadian government in regards to the whole CERB repayment situation that has left thousands and thousands and thousands of Canadians scared that they're going to have to pay back thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I saw this headline pop up and I knew it was something that I had to bring your way because I'm sure there's going to be so many people who are interested in finding out exactly what this means. The headline is class action lawsuit proposed against federal government over CERB repayment demands. If you aren't currently up to date with what all of this is about, I'd recommend going back and watching some of my previous videos, but as a quick recap, about 440,000 Canadians were sent education letters, or at least that's what the CRA called them, saying, hey, we can't confirm whether or not you're going to have to pay this back or not because we can't determine whether or not you've actually earned $5,000 of income in order to qualify you for the benefits. But it was revealed that the CRA was giving out inaccurate information in the early days of the benefit, and as a result, some people were encouraged to apply when they actually didn't qualify. So now they're saying, hey, why should I have to pay back potentially $14,000 for applying for something that the CRA told me I was eligible for, and now are going back and saying I wasn't in the first place? Let's dig into exactly what's going on with this newly filed lawsuit. Okay, so here are the details. On February 1st, 2021, a proposed class action proceeding was filed in the federal court, and the name of the lawsuit is Ryan versus Attorney General of Canada. The motion seeks a determination of the meaning of self-employed income for purposes of the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and declaration that pensioners who applied on the basis that it encompassed gross income would be entitled to the benefit. Now you'll notice this asterisk right here, and to explain that, they say that although the motion identifies the affected group of taxpayers as pensioners with smaller amounts of self-employment income, it is possible that these findings and impact will also affect those who are not earning pensions. The motion also alleges that the government changed the definition of income partway through the program. Now, let me explain this a little bit. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of a woman named Janet Ryan. Now, she's a semi-retired teacher in the Mississauga area just outside of Toronto. She was receiving pension payments as well as old age security, and in order to supplement those payments for her life, she was also a part-time tutor, self-employed one. Through this part-time tutoring business that she ran, she made $5,000 in 2019, and because she had made past that $5,000 threshold to apply for CERB, she said, hey, you know what, I am eligible for this, so I'm going to apply for the program. My income's been affected heavily by COVID, so of course I should be eligible for this. But she also was one of the people who received one of these education letters saying, hey, you didn't actually make those $5,000, you're going to have to pay back the entirety of CERB because you weren't eligible. Once it was revealed that the messaging from the CRA and essentially the rules for this program had changed, that's when she thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to go talk to a lawyer. So as they set up this new lawsuit, they actually created a website with more information. Let's go take a look at it and see what we can find. So here's the website. You can go check it out for yourself if you'd like to. There's a link in the description, but I want to show you a couple key points that I found when I was reading through it. Let me zoom this in so you can see a little bit more clearly. First, they say, here is the absurdity. The people who make the decisions about the CERB plan are now saying that the pensioners most in need, those that didn't even manage to make $5,000 net from self-employment, don't deserve any help. They don't make enough to qualify for help, but they are the most in need. Now, this confuses me a little bit because they're essentially arguing that these people who are most vulnerable, who didn't even make $5,000 in net income and instead just made that in gross income, they're the ones who should be getting this support. So they're saying, okay, that's a little weird. That's what they're going to focus on a little bit in the lawsuit. And then I also found this interesting. They say that the idea that the CRA can work with these pensioners to devise easy repayment terms is clearly not well thought out. You'll remember that Carla Qualtrough, who's the Minister of Employment for Canada, she's said multiple times, hey, the CRA is going to work with people to pay this back. We're going to make it work. It's going to be okay. They're saying here, that's not really realistic. They say there's been no review to see how many of these CERB recipients are pensioners, and almost by definition then will not have the funds to pay back and will be hardest hit in the coming severe recession when the support funds stop. Remember, that's coming in March for people who have moved on to the CRB. And they make a good point here where they say there's actually been no review to see how many of these CERB recipients are pensioners. There's actually been no review to sort of check in on this data at all. You'll remember from the previous interview that I covered with that that same person, Carla Qualtrough, that they actually don't have the numbers for how many people could be affected by this whole gross net income situation. They only know that they can't verify up to 440,000 people. Whether or not they're actually impacted by the net gross situation remains to be seen. And then I thought this was particularly interesting too. They say another absurdity. The government has downloaded the task of recovery to the CRA. So the CRA are going to be the people handling getting these payments back. The CRA staff, trained as tax auditors, will be turned into bill collectors. This will be a tax holiday for tax cheats, or so this lawsuit alleges. And this on top of the severe budget cuts by the Harper government that resulted in a loss of 4,000 staff positions, yada yada, restored by the Trudeau government. Undoubtedly, because this is the way the government functions, the CRA staff will be directed to focus their time in trying to collect this money from pensioners as well as other CERB recipients, instead of trying to recover the multi-millions of taxes that are evaded by wealthy Canadian tax dodgers every year. Now, this sounds a lot like the NDP's stance on all of this. They're really pushing for higher corporate taxes for individuals and for businesses that have actually seen record profits. They also want to implement a wealth tax for people with wealth over $20 million, I believe. And they sort of emphasize that point further, saying that if all of these payments were collected, all 440,000, that would make them $6 million. The government would reclaim $6 million. And they're saying, okay, if we could just catch a couple of many multi-millionaire tax evaders, that would pay for the entirety of it. So is it worth it to push these resources into recollecting these benefits? That's what they're questioning here. Okay, so those are some interesting details, but when you hear class action lawsuit, you might automatically think, okay, are people going after the CRA in order to get money in damages? Well, it seems like that might not be the case. Let's go through what they're actually looking to achieve through this lawsuit. So here's what they're actually seeking through this lawsuit. They say that they're looking for a policy directive that the CRA should not seek to collect any funds from any of the recipients who are receiving pension and old age security. We believe that the civil service involved have given our Prime Minister the wrong information. The mistake was theirs and not the pensioners. If we bring the desperate position of these pensioners to the Prime Minister Trudeau's attention, he will do the right thing. That's what they're looking for here. So you'll notice it's really focused on the people who are receiving pensions and old age security as these people who are most at risk. But depending on what happens with this class action suit, it could have major implications for other people who are wrapped up in potentially having to pay back the CRB, even though in their minds they qualified completely legitimately. There's a lot more interesting information on this website. I'll leave a link down there in the description again for you to take a look at it if you'd like to. But one thing that I found really interesting is they actually have a copy of the eligibility criteria, which they're saying is circa March 2020. So this is what initially was put out on the website, or that's what they're claiming. And I'll try to zoom in here to show you what's interesting. Right here, it says clear as day, a minimum of $5,000 before taxes. They say, okay, before taxes, if you've made $5,000, you could be eligible. There's not really any mention here of it being gross versus net. And again, if you've been following on these videos, a while ago I showed you a clip of the then finance minister, Bill Morneau, clearly saying gross revenue, right? Profit, as being the thing that determines this. So this is going to be an interesting case to watch. So obviously this is a very significant development. We're now seeing legal action being taken against the government for the way they handled this whole clawback situation. And you might be wondering, what did the government say in response to this sort of story being written? Well, the Toronto Star was the first to report on this class action lawsuit, and they actually included something that Carla Qualtrough said in response to them. In this article, they say that a CRA spokesperson told the Toronto Star in an email on January 27th that the agency is sensitive to cases of hardship for Canadians hit hard financially by the pandemic, and added that the government will have more information on this shortly. Okay, we're going to have to keep our eyes open for what they have in store. Also, Minister Carla Qualtrough said that same day that the government is actively looking at options to respond, and that they'll have more to say on that very soon. You'll remember we covered that response from Carla Qualtrough a little earlier in a previous video. Now, as of right now, it's unclear if this response is directly related to the lawsuit that this article is writing about, or whether or not this is just the statement in general about this whole situation and how the government sort of is going to have more information soon about how it's going to be handled. But that news really hasn't come to the surface yet. I've been watching the question question periods each day that happen in the House of Commons and sort of skimming through to find out if there's any information here that could be helpful for you guys. And there really hasn't been that much pressure on the government to come up with any solution to this problem, likely because there's only 440,000 people who are potentially affected by this. Maybe there's not as much demand for this kind of conversation to happen as there would be for some sort of situation like the vaccine rollout, which it seems to be everything they're talking about right now. But I am 100% going to keep you updated on this exact situation. So if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm constantly coming out with updates about stories like these, as well as other pressing things that I think is important for Canada as a whole to talk about. And if you appreciate this sort of Canadian content, then feel free to share this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. Also, as a side note, YouTube has let me know that they want me to talk about this join button that's down there in the corner for many of you. It's sort of this way that YouTube's given people a direct way to support creators on their platform. So if you want to take an additional step to support the channel, feel free to do that, but by no means do you have to. To be honest, I wouldn't even mention it at all if it weren't for the fact that they said I had to mention it in a video if I wanted to turn it on at all. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video's helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.